The night sky shimmered with countless stars, each one glowing like an ancestor's watchful eye. The valley lay quiet, wrapped in the gentle hum of the river, yet in the heart of the village there was no sleep. A great fire burned, its flames licking upward as if trying to speak with the heavens. Around it, the people gathered, children leaning against their mothers, warriors sitting cross-legged, elders with faces lined like cracked stone, all waiting. The steady thrum of drums echoed into the night, low and powerful, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The air was thick with the scent of burning sage and cedar. Smoke curled upward in slow spirals, carrying prayers into the sky. Chants rose and fell, the voices of the tribe weaving together as one, a river of sound, haunting and beautiful, flowing between this world and the spirit world. When the chanting faded, silence fell like a blanket. From the far side of the fire, the oldest elder rose to his feet. His hair was white as snow, his back bent with age, but his eyes still glowed with the fire of memory. His voice carried through the night trough, measured and strong. "Listen well, my children," he began, raising his hands to the sky. "For this is the prophecy that binds us, given at the dawn of our people." The crowd leaned closer. Even the youngest child hushed, sensing the weight of his words. In the beginning, when the Great Spirit breathed life into the earth, he gave us a gift, the sacred stone. It was born from the fire of the stars and cooled in the waters of the first river. It glows with the breath of creation, pulsing like a heart, holding the balance between light and darkness. As long as it rests in the heart cave, the land flourishes, and our people live in harmony. The elder paused, his eyes sweeping across the gathering. The firelight flickered across his face, deepening the shadows carved into his skin. "But hear me well," he said, lowering his voice until the words were almost a whisper. "If ever the stone is stolen, if ever it is torn from its sacred place, the shadows will rise. They will crawl from the cracks of the earth, devour the light, and consume the people until nothing remains but silence." The crowd shivered. Some crossed themselves in the old way, pressing palms to chest and lips. Others closed their eyes, murmuring prayers under their breath. The elder lifted his staff, carved with symbols of eagle, wolf, and turtle. He struck it once against the earth. The sound echoed like thunder. "This is not a story to amuse the children," he warned. "It is a truth, spoken by the ancestors, sealed by the Great Spirit himself. Remember it, carry it in your hearts, for the stone is not ours to possess, it is ours to protect." The fire crackled, sparks danced upward, vanishing into the star-scattered night. A second elder, her voice softer but no less powerful, stepped forward. "I was a child," she said, "when I first saw the stone. It rests in the heart cave, glowing in the dark like a living sun. I remember feeling its warmth on my skin, as if it breathed. It is said that those who look upon it with pure hearts feel peace, but those who gaze upon it with hunger—" She trailed off, her eyes narrowing. "They feel only fire." The people murmured among themselves. Children buried their faces in their mothers' arms. Warriors shifted uncomfortably, their eyes drawn toward the dark hills where the heart cave lay hidden. The elder man raised his hand, silencing them. "The stone is both gift and burden. We are chosen to guard it. To break this trust is to call down the shadows." The drums began against low, solemn beats that seemed to echo the prophecy's warning. The people joined in a final chant, their voices trembling yet strong. "Protect the stone, protect the people, protect the stone, protect the people." And then the ceremony ended. The fire burned low, sending long fingers of shadows stretching across the ground. Families began to drift back to their lodges, speaking in hushed voices. But the weight of the prophecy lingered, heavy as the night air. Among those who stayed behind, sitting apart from the circle, was a young warrior. His name was Tahu. His shoulders were broad, his arms strong from years of hunting, and his face still unmarked by the lines of age. Yet, it was not his strength that people noticed tonight. It was the restless fire in his eyes. While others prayed, Tahu had not bowed his head. While others looked into the fire, Tahu's gaze had wandered toward the hills, where the heart cave slept in silence. His jaw tightened as the elders spoke of duty and balance. To him, the prophecy sounded less like truth and more like a chain. Tahu's thoughts stirred like a storm. Why should the stone lie hidden? Why should such powers sit unused when enemies gather beyond the river, when rival tribes sharpen their spears? Could not the stone bring greatness, victory, even dominion? Why should we live humbly when the breath of creation lies within our reach? The drums beat on, the chants faded. The fire cracked, sending sparks spiraling upward like tiny burning stars. Tahu's gaze did not waver. His eyes glowed with a hunger the elders had warned of, but hoped never to see. And as the people drifted into sleep, whispering prayers against the shadows, Tahu sat alone, staring into the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a raven cawed sharply, its wings cutting the night air. The sound made a few elders glance uneasily at the sky. They exchanged whispers. The trickster watches. But Tahu only clenched his fists, his thoughts drawn, again and again, to the heart cave, to the stone that pulsed like a living heart, waiting in silence. He told himself he was only imagining. He told himself he was only curious. Yet, in his chest, a fire had been light, one that would not easily die. As the last drumbeat echoed across the valley, the people settled into uneasy sleep. But in the shadows beyond the firelight, a pair of restless eyes lingered too long on the hills, on the cave, on the sacred stone, and the prophecy, whispered for generations, stirred like a warning in the wind. The dawn broke gently over the valley, painting the horizon in shades of rose and gold. Mist drifted above the wide river, curling like spirit breath between the reeds. Deer grazed along the banks, unafraid, for the people of this land had lived in harmony with the animals since the first days. Birds lifted their songs to the rising sun, filling the air with music. The valley was alive, a living heart that pulsed with abundance. Here, the tribe had built its lodges from wood, hide, and stone. Smoke rose from their fires, carrying the scent of roasted fish and sweet corn. Children ran freely between the dwellings, their laughter mingling with the splash of water and the crackle of firewood. Hunters prepared their bows with careful reverence, whispering thanks to the deer and elk before the hunt even began. Women worked with steady hands, weaving baskets, shaping clay, and grinding corn into meal. Every act was a prayer, every task a rhythm woven into the great song of life. To live here was not only survival, it was balance. The people understood that the river was not theirs, but a gift. The forest not theirs, but a guardian. The sky not theirs, but a shelter of spirit. The sacred stone in the heart cave was the heart of it all. As long as it pulsed with light, the valley remained rich, and the people flourished. It was said that even in times of famine, the river gave fish when the tribe sang their songs of gratitude. When the storms threatened, the stone's glow calmed the skies. The people had no need for greed, for the land itself answered their prayers. Among them lived Kaya, a young woman with a quiet spirit and a gift unlike any other. While others saw only the waking world, Kaya walked in dreams that carried her beyond. Her visions often came like whispers, an eagle soaring before danger struck, a wolf appearing in smoke before hunters lost their way. Some feared her gift, but most respected it. They called her Dreamwalker, though she was humble and often bowed her head when spoken of. Kaya spent her mornings gathering herbs by the riverbank, speaking softly to the plants before cutting them. She offered thanks to every root, every leaf. At night, she listened to the elders' stories and carried them in her heart, for she believed the future and the past were threads of the same weaving. Yet, where Kaya saw harmony, another saw chains. Tahu, the young warrior who had sat apart at the fire the night before, lived with fire in his heart. He was strong, skilled with the spear, and fearless in battle. The other young men looked up to him, and the young women watched him with hopeful eyes. But behind his smile lay something restless. Tahu had grown weary of what he called waiting on the mercy of the spirits. "Why should we bow to the river?" he muttered one morning as he sharpened his spear. "Why should we beg the sky for calm? We are strong. We can take what we need." He spoke these words to a small circle of warriors who shifted uneasily, but listened all the same. Some nodded, drawn by the heat of his ambition. Others frowned, hearing the echo of danger in his voice. Tahu's envy often burned when Kaya spoke of her dreams. Where she saw visions, he saw weakness. "Dreams do not hunt," he once told her coldly. "Dreams do not bring meat to the fire." Kaya met his gaze calmly, her eyes steady as still water. Dreams guide the hunter to the path. Without them, he may wander into darkness. Tahu had no answer for that, but his resentment grew. The sacred stone remained hidden in the heart cave, a short walk beyond the village, guarded by song and ritual. Only the elders and the chosen few entered its chamber. Each moon, the people carried offerings shells, carved figures, woven blankets to lay at its feet. The stone pulsed softly in the darkness, as if breathing. Many believed it was alive, a fragment of the Great Spirit's own heart. On the evening of the new moon, the tribe gathered for a ceremony. The fire burned high, sending sparks into the starless night. The people circled the flames, singing the ancient songs. Drums pounded like the heartbeat of the earth, and the voices of the people rose, calling out gratitude for the harvest, for the river, for the sky. Kaya joined the circle, her eyes closed as she sang. Her voice was low but clear, carrying the weight of her visions. The elders watched her closely, for they knew the spirits often spoke through her in moments of ceremony. Tahu stood opposite her, his face lit by the fire. His voice was strong, his posture proud, but his eyes flicked often toward the dark hills, where the heart cave lay. His mind was not with the chantite, was with the stone. The fire roared. The chant swelled, and then suddenly the ceremony was broken. A harsh cry split the night. From the darkness above, a raven swooped down, black wings flashing in the firelight. It landed on the edge of the fire circle, its feathers glistening with an unnatural sheen. Its eyes glowed strangely, catching the light as though reflecting a hidden flame. The people fell silent. The drums ceased. Even the fire seemed to shrink. The raven caught again, loud and sharp, the sound echoing across the valley like a warning. It flapped its wings once, twice, scattering sparks into the air. An elder's face went pale. His lips trembled as he whispered words that chilled the gathering. The trickster watches. Gasps rippled through the circle. Mothers pulled children closer. Warriors tightened their grips on their spears. Kaya felt a coldness ripple through her heart. She closed her eyes, and, in that instant, saw a flicker of vision. Shadows crawling like snakes across the valley floor, stretching toward the heart cave. Her eyes opened wide. Across the fire, Tahu stared at the raven, his jaw set, his fists clenched. Unlike the others, fear did not cloud his gaze. Instead, there was something else, something darker, hunger. The raven gave one final caw, then leaped into the night, vanishing into the black sky. The people murmured in fear, their eyes turning toward the elders for guidance. But Kaya's heart trembled, for she knew what the vision meant. And Tahu's eyes lingered too long on the hills where the sacred stone slept in silence. The raven's cry lingered in the memory of the people long after the ceremony ended. In the days that followed, the valley felt different, less bright, less certain. The river still flowed, the deer still grazed, and the sun still rose, yet there was a tension in the air, like a string drawn too tight on a bow. The elders watched the skies more often, listening for the beat of wings. Mothers prayed longer before their hearths, and hunters spoke fewer words on the trail. Among them, Tahu carried the raven's cry, not as a warning, but as a challenge. His thoughts circled endlessly around the heart cave and the stone within. When he sharpened his spear, he imagined the glow of the sacred stone in his hand. When he walked the hunting grounds, he saw not deer and elk, but rival tribes waiting to strike. If I had the stone, he told himself, I could drive them away. I could make our people feared. I could be more than a warrior. I could be the one who leads. His words began to spill into the ears of others. Around the fire, when the elders spoke of balance and harmony, Tahu leaned close to his companions and whispered, "What is balance without strength? What is harmony if we cannot defend it? The stone is power. Why do we leave it to sleep?" Some shook their heads, repeating the prophecy and warning. But others, younger and restless, listened with uneasy fascination. They admired Tahu's fire, even as it scorched the edges of their hearts. Kaya, too, felt the change. Her dreams became heavy, restless things. One night she stood beneath a sky of blood-red clouds. The river ran black, its waters thick as tar. From the shadows of the forest stepped a wolf, its fur silver, its eyes burning with sorrow. The wolf padded close, lowering its head until its muzzle nearly touched hers. Its voice was not spoken, but carried on the wind, echoing deep inside her chest. Shadows follow the hand that touches what is not his. Kaya gasped awake, sweat dampening her brow, her heart thundering. She knew the spirits were warning her, yet their words came wrapped in mystery. She thought of Tahu, of the hunger in his eyes the night of the raven. She thought of the elder's prophecy, of the stone's glow in the cave. Fear coiled within her, for she knew something dangerous had begun to stir. The tribe carried on, with its rhythms, as it always had. But now those rhythms seemed sharper, more deliberate, as if the people sensed a storm gathering. The medicine singers continued their songs of protection, their voices weaving prayers through the smoke of burning cedar. At the river, women lifted their hands to the sky during the moon ritual, calling for the waters to remain pure. Hunters left offerings of cornmeal before taking game, their bows lowered in reverence. Each act reminded the people of their connection to the Great Spirit, to the land, to each other. But to Tahu, these rituals felt small, weak threads of tradition that could be broken by the hand of an enemy. One evening, as the fire circle gathered, Tahu sat apart once more. The elders told a story of the first stone, of how it fell from the stars and cooled in the river, glowing with life. They spoke of the ancestors who were entrusted with its care, and the vow passed down through generations, to protect, never to possess. Tahu's lips curled into a faint, bitter smile. Protect, 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 he thought. Always the same words, always fear of what might be, never the courage to take what could be. His mind raced with images, the sacred stone in his hands, light pouring from his body, the shadows bending to his will instead of consuming him. He imagined leading his people into battle, the rival tribes fleeing at the sight of his power. He imagined songs sung not of balance, but of victory, his name carried by the wind. Across the fire, Kaya's eyes caught his. She saw the flicker in his expression, the restless fire that no ritual could calm. She knew the wolf's warning had been for him. Fear knotted her stomach. She whispered to the elder beside her, "He is listening to the wrong voices." The elder sighed heavily, his eyes clouded with sorrow. "The raven has his ear. We can only pray the stone does not answer his hunger." But prayer alone could not stop the path already unfolding. That night, the fire burned low, casting long shadows across the valley floor. The people drifted to their lodges, their voices fading into the quiet. The drums fell silent, the chants ended, and the stars wheeled above in watchful silence. Tao remained by the embers, his face lit in flickering red. His companions had gone, leaving him alone with his thoughts. His hand rested on the spear across his knees. but his gaze was fixed on the dark silhouette of the hills. The heart cave lay hidden there, its mouth sealed with stone and guarded by nothing more than song and belief. He thought of the stone pulsing within, glowing like a living heart. He thought of its warmth in his hands, its power coursing through his body. His breath quickened. From the shadows of the trees, an owl hooted once, then fell silent. The night seemed to hold its breath. Tahu rose to his feet. His steps were slow at first, hesitant, as if part of him still clung to the circle's warmth. But the hunger pushed harder. His stride grew stronger, his figure melting into the darkness beyond. The firelight. Kaya stirred in her sleep, dreaming again of the silver wolf. She saw it lift its head, howling into a night without stars. Shadows writhed at its paws, reaching toward a figure moving silently through the dark. She woke with a start, the echo of the howl still ringing in her ears. Outside her lodge, the fire circle lay empty, and in the soft earth near its edge, fresh footprints led away toward the forbidden cave. The night swallowed Tahu's figure whole, his footsteps carrying him closer to the heart cave. The prophecy whispered on the wind, unseen yet alive. If the sacred stone is taken, the shadows will rise. Night had fallen like a velvet curtain over the valley, swallowing the river in darkness and turning the trees into shadows that shivered in the wind. The stars were hidden behind heavy clouds, and only the faint glow of distant embers from the village fire remained. The heart cave loomed on the hillside, black and silent, its entrance gaping like the mouth of a sleeping giant. Tahu moved through the night with the precision of a predator. His footsteps were soundless on the soft earth. Each tree he passed seemed to watch him, their branches creaking as if warning him to turn back. Yet he did not stop. Every instinct of his body, every whisper of caution, was drowned by the fire in his chest. The stone waited for him, and he would claim it. The cave mouth breathed a cold wind, carrying the scent of stone, earth, and something ancient, something alive. Tao stepped inside. The walls seemed to close in, narrow and jagged, yet the deeper he went, the brighter the light became. Not harsh, not of fire, but a steady, pulsing glow that filled the chamber with its quiet radiance. There, at the center, resting upon a stone pedestal carved by ancestors long gone, was the sacred stone. It throbbed gently, as if alive, each pulse sending a warmth into the cold chamber. The colors shifted like liquid sunlight, gold, red, and silver mingling in a soft rhythm. The air hummed with energy. Tahu's breath caught. He had seen it in his dreams, but the reality surpassed even his most daring imaginings. He stepped closer, every nerve in his body aware of the power radiating from it. The fire of desire and ambition surged in him, a force more intoxicating than any wine, more consuming than the hunger of a hunter tracking its prey. His fingers hovered above the stone. He hesitated for a heartbeat, a single moment where the weight of the prophecy might have stayed him. But he thought of rival tribes, of power, of greatness, and he pushed forward. When his fingers brushed the surface, the chamber seemed to shiver. Fire coursed through his veins, hot and bright, making his skin tingle, his heart pound like a drum. The glow of the stone reflected in his eyes, and his shadow stretched unnaturally long across the walls, writhing as if alive. He felt the pulse of the stone synchronize with his own heartbeat, and for a fleeting instant, he believed he was invincible. And then, the cave seemed to exhale. A low vibration hummed through the rock beneath his feet, a warning from the ancestors. The air grew heavy, thick like water, pressing against his chest. The stone's light flared, bathing the cave in blinding brilliance for a heartbeat, and then dimmed again, almost mournfully, as if sensing what was about to be lost. Tahu clenched the stone to his chest. Power flooded him, a force so vast it made him stagger. He imagined bending the shadows to his will, commanding the rivers, the winds, the beasts, and even men. For the first time, he felt the taste of dominion, the thrill of absolute strength. And yet, deep beneath that exhilaration, a whisper of unease clawed at the edges of his mind. Somewhere in the silence, he heard faint echoes of the prophecy, carried on a wind he could not see. If the sacred stone is taken from its place, the shadows will rise and consume the people. He ignored it. Step by step, he turned toward the cave's mouth. The stone pulsed in his hands, illuminating his path. Each step seemed to make the earth tremble slightly beneath him. Rocks shifted. A gust of wind rushed through the chamber, as if the cave itself were breathing, groaning in warning. Tahu's pulse quickened. The power surged stronger, a roaring flame inside him, yet he felt the weight of the valley itself pressing against him. Every shadow in the corners seemed to stretch toward him, hungry and alive. He did not see them as threats. He saw them as part of the prize. And then a thought struck him, a question that echoed in the deep chambers of his mind. What would you do if a single choice threatened your whole people? He paused, the stone still clutched tightly. The cave fell silent once more. The wind stilled. Even the shadows seemed to hold their breath. In that moment, for the first time, the full weight of what he had done pressed down on him. Yet Tahu could not turn back. His pride, his ambition, and the hunger for power drove him forward. The moon broke free from the clouds outside, a pale silver light spilling into the valley. Tahu emerged from the cave, the sacred stone cradled in his arms. For a moment, he thought he could hear whispers of awe, of fear, and of promise, all at once. The air felt charged with magic, alive in a way that had never existed before. But the night had changed. The river below rippled unnaturally. The wind carried a cold bite, and the valley seemed to shiver under a sky that had lost its stars. Tahu did not notice. His focus was only on the fire that now burned inside him, the fire that would not be quenched. He walked back toward the village, unaware that the first shadows had already begun to stir. They moved silently, slithering along the edges of the forest, brushing against roots and rocks, waiting. The valley that had once thrummed with life now seemed to hold its breath. By dawn, the villagers would awaken to a new world. The next morning, the stone was gone. The elders fell to their knees, their faces pale with grief and fear. The drums of warning sounded from the lodge roofs, and the prophecy was no longer a story whispered in the night it had begun. Shadows were coming, and with them, the valley would never be the same. The morning after Tahu's theft, the valley seemed to awaken to an uneasy silence. Birds no longer sang at dawn. The river, once clear and lively, ran sluggishly, its surface dotted with floating fish whose scales had turned gray and lifeless. Deer fled into the forests, their eyes wide with panic. Even the wind felt different, heavier, as though carrying whispers of warning that no one dared to hear. Kaya walked along the riverbank, her hands clasped before her. She knelt to touch the water, feeling its unnatural chill seep through her fingers. A tremor of dread ran through her chest. The wolf from her dreams returned in memory, its silver eyes warning her of the danger that had already begun to rise. By midday, the village was alive with whispers of unease. Mothers clutched their children, and the elders gathered to discuss omens. The sacred stone was gone. Its absence was not just a loss of power. It was a wound that the land itself felt. Shadows began creeping along the forest edges, curling unnaturally around the tree trunks, lingering like smoke that would not dissipate. And then, at dusk, it happened. A child named Little Sora had been playing near the river's edge, collecting stones and tossing them into the water. In a blink, she vanished. The only sign of her passing was a dark stain on the soft mud, spreading like ink in water. Her mother screamed, and the village erupted into panic. Families ran into the forest calling her name. Hunters and warriors searched, but the shadows seemed to close around them, hiding whatever had claimed her. Tahu returned to the village. Later that night, his figure outlined by the dying firelight. He spoke boldly, a grin on his face that did not reach his eyes. "I have seen the power. he announced to anyone who would listen. I have touched it. I saw visions of strength and victory. The shadows are nothing, they bend to me. The people stared in disbelief and fear. Some whispered prayers to the Great Spirit. Others avoided his gaze, feeling the chill of misfortune surrounding him. Kaya noticed something else. Perched on the edge of the clearing, a spirit raven watched Tahu with glowing eyes. Its black feathers shimmered with an otherworldly light, and it tilted its head as if whispering secrets that only Kaya could hear. The words came not in sound, but in a deep pulse in her chest. He does not yet understand. The shadows follow. He walks on the edge of ruin. Kaya's heart tightened. She wanted to speak to the villagers, to warn them, but her voice faltered. Fear had already begun to seep into the valley, and the people were not ready to hear the truth. Night deepened. The moon, once silver and steady, vanished behind a thick blanket of clouds. Darkness spread, swallowing the familiar shapes of the river and forest. The shadows moved differently now, as if alive and watching, waiting. From the forest edge, a figure began to rise. At first, the villagers thought it a tree or a hill, but it shifted, lifted itself upright, and stepped into the clearing. Taller than any man, its body cloaked in darkness that seemed to drink in the light. It moved with a slow, deliberate grace. Its eyes burned like coals, red and unyielding, staring into the hearts of those who dared to look. A hush fell over the valley. Children clung to mothers. Warriors stiffened, hands reaching for spears that suddenly felt small and fragile. The shadow did not speak, yet the air around it vibrated with threat. The forest itself seemed to recoil. Tahu stood his ground, raising his chin, but for the first time, a flicker of fear crossed his face. He had imagined power, conquest, and control, but he had not imagined this. Not this raw, elemental force that seemed to pulse from the earth itself. Kaya stepped forward, her feet barely touching the ground. She whispered prayers under her breath, calling upon the ancestors, calling upon the wolf, calling upon the guidance of the Great Spirit. The raven cawed sharply, flapping from its perch and circling above, casting a shadow over Tahu. It landed again near Kaya, whispering once more in pulses only she could feel. The first shadow has come. Watch carefully. Learn quickly. The valley trembles. The villagers felt the tension like a living thing pressing down on them. Even the fire from the hearths trembled and sputtered as if afraid. Wind rustled through the trees, carrying distant, distorted sounds, whispers, cries, echoes that did not belong to the valley. Tahu's grin faded. His bold words of victory and visions of power had no place here. The shadow seemed to know him, to recognize his greed and ambition. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, yet he did not move. Kaya raised her hands, calling on the knowledge passed down through generations. She felt the pulse of the sacred stone, even from its absence. Its energy whispered through the land, faint but persistent, guiding her understanding. The shadow shifted slightly, tilting its burning eyes toward the village. It did not attack, not yet, but its presence was a promise, a warning, a declaration. The valley had been touched, the balance broken, and the darkness was no longer dormant. And then, as quickly as it appeared, the shadow retreated into the edge of the forest. The villagers exhaled collectively, though relief did not reach their hearts. They had seen the power that had been awakened. They had glimpsed the consequence of Tahu's choice. Kaya looked toward Tahu, whose posture was rigid, his face pale in the firelight. The spirit raven perched once again near him, wings folded, eyes glimmering with silent judgment. Kaya whispered to herself, a prayer carried on the wind. The shadows follow, and we are not ready. Not yet. The valley was no longer safe. The sacred stone had been stolen. The shadows had begun to stir, and in the dark of the forest, something waited, taller, older, and hungrier than any man could imagine. A hush fell over the valley. The villagers dared not move, dared not speak. From the edge of the forest, a shadowy figure rose taller than any man, its eyes burning like coals. The night trembled, the wind held its breath, and the first shadow of many had come. The morning after the shadow's appearance, the valley felt smaller, as if the land itself had shrunk beneath an invisible weight. The river no longer sang. Its waters moved sluggishly, reflecting the gray sky above. Trees leaned unnaturally toward one another, and even the wind seemed hesitant, carrying whispers of dread that rustled through the village. Kaya rose before dawn. She could feel the pulse of the sacred stone in her chest, faint yet persistent, calling her to action. The wolf from her visions had returned in her dreams again, urging her to seek guidance from the ancestors. Today, she would gather the dreamers, the ones who could see beyond the waking world, the children and adults who had learned to listen to whispers from the spirits. By the riverbank, Kaya formed a circle. The dreamers sat cross-legged, eyes closed, their hands resting lightly on their knees. Candles of wax and cedar burned softly, sending thin streams of smoke curling into the morning mist. Kaya spoke, her voice steady and clear. "We must see the truth of what has begun. The shadows follow the hand that touches what is not his. We must ask our ancestors for guidance." The dreamers began their ritual, humming medicine songs passed down through countless generations. Their voices wove together like the threads of a sacred tapestry, carrying prayers through the smoke and into the unseen. The river's edge shimmered, faintly as if the waters themselves were listening, and then visions began to form, appearing before their closed eyes, like glimpses into another realm. A river of black water stretched across the valley, curling around the trees and swallowing everything in its path. Tahu appeared on the far bank, standing tall and proud, holding the sacred stone. Wolves circled him in a dance of warning, and fury eyes glowing with spectral fire. Their snarls filled the air, but Tahu saw them not as threat, but as servants of power. The dreamers gasped as the vision shifted. The stone itself seemed alive, crying silently in the darkness of the cave. Its glow flickered like a dying heartbeat. Each pulse sent tremors through the land, and the shadows stretched longer and darker, advancing toward the village in slow, deliberate waves. Kaya opened her eyes, her breath shallow. She knew the ancestors were speaking through the visions. The valley, the people, even the river itself could not survive if the balance were not restored. "The shadows are not mere shadows," Kaya said softly, her voice trembling with urgency. "They are the consequence of greed, of ambition, of the breach of trust with the spirits, and they will not stop." The elders and villagers listened, some with fear, others with doubt. Already, whispers of division stirred among the people. Some spoke in hushed tones, agreeing with Kaya, seeing the danger that loomed. "We must restore the balance. We must follow the guidance of the ancestors," they said. Others, captivated by Tahu's boldness, argued in return. "Why wait?" they murmured. "The stone's power could make us strong. We could protect ourselves. Why bow to fear when we can wield the gift?" The valley, once united in song and labor, now began to split. Families, friends, and hunting partners debated fiercely. Trust frayed like worn leather. Fear and ambition coiled together in tension, each choice carrying weight that could tip the balance irrevocably. Kaya held her hands outward, raising them toward the sky. The dreamers hummed again, their voices forming a shield of song that wrapped around the village, fragile yet persistent. She felt the pull of the sacred stone, even from its hiding place. She knew the temptation it cast over Tahu and others was strong. Her voice rose above the hum, steady and clear. "Would you follow the path of Firor, the path of balance? The choice is yours. But know this, the shadows follow the greedy heart, and they will not stop until the land is devoured." Some of the villagers nodded, eyes downcast, hearts heavy with understanding. Others clenched their fists, unable to release the lure of power. The division grew like a scar across the valley, unseen but present in every glance and whisper. Night fell heavier than before. The fire in the village burned low, flickering against the shadows that lengthened unnaturally along the ground. The river seemed to shrink in the darkness, its water whispering warnings that no one could decipher. And then the shadows came. At first, they were small shapes, moving like smoke between the tents. Then larger forms emerged, creeping across the village in waves. Children cried, and the elders' voices rose in alarm, chanting prayers and striking drums to ward off the darkness. But the shadows were relentless. They twisted, coiled, and flowed like living smoke, consuming the warmth of the fire and the light of the torches. By the time the villagers realized the scale of what was happening, entire tents had been swallowed, reduced to ash and splintered. Whole families clung together, huddled in fear, watching the destruction unfold. The shadows did not speak, did not pause. They simply consumed, leaving behind silence heavier than death. Kaya's eyes widened as she saw the wave of darkness stretching toward the riverbank, toward the people she loved. She felt the pull of the sacred stone, its silent cry echoing in her chest. The wolf from her dreams appeared beside her, spectral and fierce, its silver eyes urging her to act, to guide, to protect. Tahu, standing apart from the chaos, held the stone close, yet his eyes flickered with doubt. For the first time, the weight of his choice pressed against him. Even his bravado could not mask the fear growing deep inside. Kaya's voice rose, above the tumult, steady and commanding. We cannot wait. We must restore the balance, or all we love will be lost. The shadows recoiled momentarily at her words, as if sensing the strength of her spirit. But the darkness was relentless, and the night stretched endlessly before the valley, full of peril and fear. The village trembled under the onslaught. Shadows descended in numbers, consuming tents, scattering families, and leaving only ash and silence in their wake. The balance was broken, and the struggle had only just begun. The valley lay in ruin, a pale echo of the life it had once held. Shadows lingered in corners, coiling around the broken remains of huts and scorched earth. Kaya stood at the riverbank, her heart heavy, the wolf from her dreams pacing silently at her side. The sacred stone had been taken, and with it, the balance of the world. Fear hung in the air like thick fog, pressing down on every living thing. Kaya knew there was only one path left, one that would demand every ounce of courage she possessed. She would descend into the spirit world, a place few mortals had walked and returned to tell. Only there could she seek the guidance of the great spirit and learn how to restore what had been broken. She prepared herself with solemn care. For 3 days and nights, she fasted, drinking only water from the river, allowing the rhythms of her own body to attune to the pulse of the land. She painted her face with ashen clay, marking the lines of her ancestors across her skin. She carried sacred herbs in a pouch, their smoke to call forth visions. At dusk, Kaya began her climb up the sacred mountain, its jagged peaks shrouded in mist. The air grew thin, the wind colder with each step. Each footfall carried the weight of purpose, and each heartbeat echoed in her chest like a drum calling the spirits to witness. By nightfall, she reached the summit. She knelt, placing her hands upon the cold stone, and called aloud to the Great Spirit, her voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Great Spirit, guardian of balance, hear me. Show me the path to restore what has been taken. Teach me how to bind the shadows and protect my people. The wind rose suddenly, carrying whispers that seemed to curl around her. The mountain trembled as if responding to her plea, and then, as her eyes closed, the spirit world unfolded before her. The land shifted. Colors became brighter and deeper than any she had seen before. The sky glowed with a light that seemed to flow like liquid gold. The river ran crystal clear, sparkling with a song she could feel in her bones. The air vibrated with presence, ancestors, spirits, and guardians who had watched over the valley for generations. From the shadows of the spirit world, 3 figures emerged: a wolf, an eagle, and a turtle. Each moved with deliberate grace, their eyes shining with wisdom. The wolf approached first. Its fur shimmered with silver light. Its gaze met Kaya's, and she felt a surge of understanding. "Endurance," the wolf whispered, its voice like wind through leaves. "Walk the path of courage, even when darkness surrounds you. The journey will test your body and your spirit." Next, the eagle descended, its wings vast and radiant. Its talons barely touched the ground, yet its presence commanded the sky. "Vision," the eagle said, voice like rolling thunder. "See beyond what is before you. Look into the hearts of men and spirits alike. Understand the web of cause and consequence." Finally, the turtle emerged from the river of light, its shell etched with symbols of time and patience. "Patience," the turtle murmured, voice deep and steady. "The stone moves through hands that are not yours. The shadows cannot be undone by haste. Wait, observe, act with care." Kaya absorbed their wisdom, feeling it sink into her bones. She knew the lesson was clear. She must reclaim the sacred stone, for only by returning it could the shadows be bound. The prophecy had begun, and the survival of the valley depended not on strength or pride, but on harmony, endurance, and clarity of vision. The spirit world began to dissolve, the colors fading, the land reshaping itself into the mist of the mortal plane. Kaya felt herself falling gently, carried by unseen hands. The wind whispered around her as she descended the mountain, carrying the last words of the guides: "Return the stone, restore the balance." The shadows follow greed, but they can be bound by courage and wisdom. She awoke at dawn, her body stiff and chilled, her spirit heavy, yet resolute. But the valley was no longer the same. Shadows, small at first, now moved freely among the people. Some villagers' eyes glimmered with unnatural darkness, their voices carrying tones that were not their own. Mothers whispered in horror as they watched friends and family walk with strange steps, murmuring in ways that made no sense. Kaya's heart sank. The shadows had found new hosts, creeping inside the very tribe she sought to protect. The wolf from her dreams appeared at her side, its eyes fierce and urging her forward. The eagle's shadow soared above, circling in the morning light. The turtle remained at her feet, steady and patient, reminding her that even in despair, careful action could turn the tide. Kaya rose to her feet, her gaze sweeping across the valley. She could see tents already abandoned, families hiding, and the creeping darkness moving from one person to the next. Tahu had not returned yet, but she could sense his presence in the air, a taint of ambition and fear mingled together. She clenched her fists and spoke aloud, her voice carrying across the river and the scattered remnants of the village. "The shadows may dwell within our people, but they do not yet hold our hearts. We will not yield. We will follow the path the Great Spirit has shown us. We will endure. We will see clearly, and we will act with patience and courage." The wolf growled low, a sound that vibrated in Kaya's chest. The eagle cried sharply from above, warning her that the time for thought would soon meet the time for action. The turtle's steady gaze reminded her that haste could destroy all she had learned, and in that moment, Kaya understood the full weight of her mission. The sacred stone must be returned, the shadows must be bound, and the balance of the valley restored. But the path would be treacherous. The enemy was not only Tahu, not only the shadows, but the corruption now living within her own people. Kaya's eyes widened as she scanned the village. Shadows now dwelled inside some of the tribe there, eyes dark, their voices no longer their own. The enemy had already entered the hearts of the people she loved, and the struggle to reclaim the sacred stone and save her people was about to become more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The valley was a storm of shadow and fear. Fires burned along the riverbank, their smoke curling into the heavy sky. As the villagers prepared for what might be their final stand, Kaya stood among them, her heart pounding, hands trembling with a mixture of dread and determination. The sacred stone's pulse could be felt, even from afar, radiating power and despair through the land. Tahu had changed. The boy who once dreamed of strength was now half consumed by the shadows. His muscles were taut and formidable, yet his eyes burned with hollow fire. Greed and ambition had replaced humanity, leaving only a shell that the shadows whispered through. The sacred stone clutched to his chest fed the darkness within him, twisting him into something no longer entirely human. The tribe gathered in preparation. Warriors painted their faces with red ochre and white ash, symbols of courage and protection. Drums pounded in rhythmic fury, their echoes rolling across the valley like thunder heralding war. Chants rose, calling upon the Great Spirit, the ancestors, and the guardians of the land. Spears and bows were readied, arrows tipped with sacred herbs, and shields marked with symbols of protection. Kaya moved to the forefront, the wolf from her visions circling at her side, silent and watchful. Her eyes scanned the encroaching darkness. Where Tahu had made his stand near the cliff overlooking the river, shadows writhed around him, reaching outward, swallowing trees and earth like tendrils of smoke. Kaya, an elder, shouted, gripping her shoulder. The shadows grow. He is no longer the boy we knew. He commands the darkness itself. Be careful, I must face him, Kaya said, her voice steady, yet trembling beneath the weight of responsibility. The stone must be returned. If I fail, the valley will fall. The villagers lined the battlefield, drums beating faster, chants rising in urgent cadence. Kaya stepped forward, moving into the clearing where Tahu awaited. His figure was dark, his body strong, yet the shadows licked at his skin, coiling and twisting as if alive. The sacred stone glowed in his hands, pulsing like a heartbeat that did not belong to him. Kaya, Tahu said, his voice eerily calm, despite the chaos around him. Do you see what I have become? Power flows through me. I can command the shadows. I can protect our people, crush our enemies, shape the valley in my hand. Power without balance is ruin, Kaya replied, tears stinging her eyes. Return the stone. Stop this before the shadows consume everything. We are your people, Tahu. Do not let the darkness take you. Tahu laughed, a hollow sound that carried no warmth. I do not need to stop. The shadows follow me because I am strong. You fear what you cannot control. I fear nothing. The shadows responded to his words, erupting like a storm around him. Their movement was unnatural, spiraling into a whirlwind that darkened the sky, blotting out the moon and stars. The wind screamed, carrying whispers and cries of the fallen. Trees twisted under the invisible force, earth trembled beneath the power, and the river surged violently, as if it were alive. Kaya felt the pull of the stone calling to her, guiding her through the chaos. She ran toward Tahu, weaving through fallen trees and shards of shadow. Around her, warriors fought to hold back the encroaching darkness, their spears slicing at tendrils that seemed to dissolve into mist, only to return. Drums thundered like the heartbeat of the world, chants rising in a desperate plea to the Great Spirit. Tal raised the sacred stone, and the shadows surged outward, sweeping across the warriors. Screams echoed as men and women were swallowed into darkness, their bodies vanishing, leaving only hollow echoes in the wind. The sky blackened, streaked with flashes of unnatural lightning, illuminating the chaos in jagged, ghostly light. Kaya reached the edge of the storm, her pulse raced. The wolf's howl pierced the air, guiding her steps. She could see the hollow flame of Tahu's eyes, the shadows crawling up his arms, the stone pulsing with unnatural energy. Kaya, Tahu said, voice twisted with ambition, come closer, feel the power. Join me. I cannot join what destroys, Kaya replied, lifting her hands in a gesture of calm and focus. The Great Spirit's balance must be restored. This ends tonight. The shadows roared like a living beast, whipping around her, seeking to consume her courage, her hope. Kaya's vision widened. The eagle from her dreams soared above, a shining guide against the storm. The turtle's steady presence anchored her in patience, reminding her that one impulsive act could doom the valley entirely. Lightning cracked above, splitting the night in blinding brilliance. The roar of thunder rattled the cliffs and shook the earth beneath their feet. The shadows writhed and lunged, hungry and unrelenting. Kaya's heartbeat aligned with the pulse of the sacred stone. She leaped forward, driven by both fear and determination. The wolf dashed beside her, its teeth bared, eyes glowing with spectral fire. The air itself seemed to resist her movement, heavy with darkness, yet she pushed onward, reaching toward Tahu and the stolen power that threatened to devour the world. As lightning split the sky above them, Kaya leapt toward Tahu, the sacred stone pulsing violently between his hands. The shadows surged around them, the wind howling, the drums of the earth beating a furious rhythm. The valley held its breath, and the outcome of their confrontation hung suspended between life, darkness, and the fate of all they loved. The storm of shadows roared across the valley, devouring everything in its path. Kaya's heart pounded like a drum, matching the rhythm of the chaos around her. The sacred stone glowed violently between Tahu's hands, pulsing with a power that seemed beyond mortal comprehension. Shadows twisted and writhed around him, moving as if alive, circling like raven-winged predators. Kaya took a deep breath. Centering herself, she called upon the Great Spirit and the wisdom of her ancestors, feeling the presence of her spirit guides the wolf, the eagle, and the turtle rising alongside her. The wolf's spectral form darted forward, teeth bared, lunging to distract the shadows. The eagle soared above, wings cutting through the darkness, guiding Kaya's vision. The turtle's slow, steady steps rooted her courage, reminding her that patience and endurance were as vital as strength. Tahu laughed, a hollow sound, the shadows twisting around him as if feeding on his ambition. "You cannot take it," he shouted. "This power is mine. It bends to me." Kaya's eyes blazed with determination. Power without balance destroys everything it touches. She shouted back. She stepped forward, every movement precise, her hands raised in the ancient gesture of binding, her voice chanting in the old tongue of the ancestors. The shadows shrieked, responding to both their master and their enemy. They lashed out, tendrils of darkness striking at Kaya, attempting to pull her into despair. Yet she moved with clarity, her spirit guides shielding her path. The wolf lunged at the nearest tendrils, scattering them into mist. The eagle swooped, its cries slicing through the shadows. The turtle remained steady, guiding Kaya's footfalls, keeping her grounded as the storm raged. Tao staggered, the stone pulsing violently in his grasp. For the first time, fear flashed across his eyes. He raised the stone higher, trying to summon the darkness to defend him. But Kaya stepped closer, chanting louder, calling upon the ancestors, calling upon the earth itself to reclaim what had been stolen. The sacred stone pulsed violently, as if recognizing Kaya's heart. The power of the Great Spirit flowed through her, her voice and spirit harmonizing with the rhythm of creation itself. With a surge of courage, Kaya lunged forward, seizing the stone from Tahu's trembling hands. For a heartbeat, time seemed to pause. Tahu's human self flickered through the darkness, his eyes wide with regret and sorrow. He had glimpsed the devastation he had caused, the shadows consuming his people, the betrayal of his own heart. The stone pulsed in Kaya's hands, a calm, steady light, as if approving her action. The shadows around Tahu shrieked, recoiling from the presence of the stone in rightful hands. Kaya did not falter. She turned, her chants rising in crescendo, carrying the voice of the ancestors, echoing through the valley. The wind answered, swirling in harmony, pulling the darkness away from the earth, drawing it toward the heart of the land. Step by step, Kaya moved toward the heart cave. The shadows clawed at her, reaching out in fury, but the strength of the stone and the guidance of her spirit animals shielded her. The wolf growled, biting at the closest tendrils. The eagle circled overhead, sharp cries scattering the darkness. The turtle's steady presence pressed her forward, ensuring she did not stumble, did not falter. When Kaya reached the cave, she placed the stone upon its ancient pedestal. Light exploded from it, flooding the chamber, racing outward into the valley. The shadows screamed, a chorus of rage and despair. As they were pulled into the earth, drawn into the stone's protective power, the darkness twisted, roared, and then, with a final shuddering cry, dissipated, leaving the valley in silence. Tao collapsed, his body trembling. The shadows no longer shielded him. The stone's calm light revealed the boy he had once been, a human weighed down by ambition and regret. Kaya approached him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The stone does not belong to those who take it for selfish gain," she whispered. "It belongs to the balance, to the land, to the people." For a moment, Tahu's eyes glimmered, with understanding, tears mingling with the ashen dirt on his face. Then the light of the stone bathed him, and the shadows within him finally retreated, leaving only a hollow memory of the darkness that had almost consumed him. The ancestors' voices whispered in the wind, soft and reassuring, praising Kaya's courage, her endurance, and her wisdom. The river returned to life, flowing with renewed clarity. Trees straightened, leaves brushing against one another as if sighing in relief. Birds slowly returned, singing tentative songs that rippled through the valley. Kaya fell to her knees, exhausted, her spirit drained, but resolute. She had restored the sacred stone to its rightful place, bound the shadows, and brought the first semblance of balance back to the valley. The wolf, eagle, and turtle remained by her side a moment longer, then vanished into the light of dawn, leaving her alone but guided by the strength of her spirit. And yet, a hollow emptiness tugged at her chest. She rose, brushing dirt and ash from her robes, stepping toward the village. Her heart sank as she looked across the valley. Tents lay abandoned. Fires were reduced to cold embers. The streets and riverbanks were eerily silent. Kaya's voice trembled as she called out for her people. Only silence answered. Most of the tribe was gone, taken by the shadows or scattered. In the chaos, the valley was calm once more, but it was empty. Kaya stood alone among the remnants of what had been a hero, victorious, yet a guardian now facing the haunting cost of the battle. The valley lay quiet beneath the pale light of dawn. Smoke curled lazily from the cold embers of the village fires, but the air was still, heavy with sorrow. Most of the people were gone, lost to the shadows, or scattered across the wilderness. In fear, only a few remained, faces etched with grief, eyes hollow from the horrors they had witnessed. The river flowed quietly now, its waters reflecting the muted light, as if mourning the loss of so much life. Kaya moved among the survivors, her hands steady but her heart aching. She carried the sacred stone within the heart cave, where its gentle glow pulsed in harmony with the land. The stone had been returned, and the shadows bound, but the cost was etched into every tree, every river bend, every whispered memory of the valley. She knelt beside the children who remained, singing the old songs of balance and harmony, passing the stories of their ancestors into voices that trembled yet endured. Her eyes traced the river's curves, the forest's edge, and the distant mountains, absorbing the silence left behind by the fallen. Each step reminded her that courage alone could not restore what had been lost. Only reverence for the sacred and the teachings of the spirits could guide the future. Kaya became more than a survivor. She became a keeper of stories. She traveled across the lands, visiting other tribes and settlements, sharing the tale of the sacred stone and the shadows it had called forth. "Respect the sacred," she warned, her voice steady yet soft, "or the shadows will return. Power taken for pride will always demand a price." Her journeys were long and often lonely, but spirit guides accompanied her at every step, wolf guarding her courage, the eagle sharpening her vision, the turtle grounding her in patience. Through her travels, She shared wisdom not only of survival, but of harmony, teaching that strength without balance brings ruin, and that the land and its spirits must be honored in every thought, word, and action. Those who listened remembered the story of Kaya's tribe, not for its power, but for its fall. The elders' chants, the drums, the dances, and rituals were remembered in tales and echoes, but always with a shadow of warning. Even the strongest people, Kaya would say, can be undone when they ignore the sacred. Listen to the river, the wind, the animals, the spirits, watch, and they remember. At night, Kaya would return to the heart cave. She placed her hands upon the stone, feeling its gentle pulse beneath her fingertips. It glowed softly, a living reminder of what had been nearly lost, a light undimmed by greed or ambition. The shadows were bound, but their memory lingered, a whisper carried on the wind, a tremor through the trees. She often thought of Tahu. He had glimpsed the consequences of his ambition, his greed, and the hollowness left in its wake. For a brief moment, he had returned to himself, but the valley had already paid the price. Kaya did not speak of vengeance or blame. She only reminded those who listened that choice carries weight beyond comprehension. The valley itself seemed to breathe in silence, the earth remembering each step, each misdeed, and each act of reverence. The survivors learned that the sacred stone was not merely a gift, it was a responsibility, a covenant with the spirits of the land, the ancestors, and the Great Spirit. Those who ignored that covenant invited ruin, and those who honored it found guidance, strength, and protection beyond measure. Kaya's story spread, whispered by travelers, carried by the wind, sung in songs, and painted in pictographs. It became a living lesson for generations. The shadows may sleep, but they are always waiting for the hand that dares to take what is not theirs. The land does not forget, the spirits do not sleep, and those who break harmony will answer for their greed in ways that echo beyond their own lifetimes. Even in her final days among the survivors, Kaya felt the weight of memory pressing upon her. Each name lost, each life extinguished, became part of the story she carried. Yet, despite sorrow, there was hope. Seeds planted, rivers flowing, and stories shared ensured that balance could still return, that new generations could learn, and that the shadows would remain bound for now. The earth does not forget, the spirits do not sleep, and the shadows wait for those who break harmony. Kaya whispered these words to the children gathered around her, their faces shining in the soft light of morning. The lesson of the sacred stone was clear. Respect, courage, patience, and balance are not mere virtues, they are survival. Would you have taken the stone, or guarded it with your life? Kaya's words carried across the valley like a call to conscience, a challenge to all who might someday stand at the threshold of temptation and power. As she left the heart cave one final time, the sacred stone glowed silently on its pedestal, bathed in the light of dawn. Kaya watched as the valley stretched before her, quiet, scarred, yet alive. The wind carried the whispers of ancestors and the soft rustle of spirit guides unseen. And so the sacred stone remains, glowing in silence, watched by spirits, feared by men, untouched by hands of greed. The valley held its breath, a sacred pause between past and future, a reminder that balance must always be honored, or the shadows will rise again.